Let's get some analysis. William Lawrence joins us, professor at the American University in Washington. Good evening to you, sir. Are you surprised to learn that the Pegasus spyware has been used on the likes of Emmanuel Macron?
Yes. We do know that it was used for political dissidents, for human rights activists, for journalists, particularly by a number of Middle Eastern and North African states. But this is the first we've heard of it being used against major heads of state. Now, we don't know for sure the level of access they had. It was on a list of potential targets that was released by this work that Amnesty International and others have been doing. We don't know if they had total access to the phone. And we do know that national spy agencies do this kind of surveillance all the time. You may remember the U.S. surveillance of Merkel's phone that was revealed in the press some years ago. I know from my intelligence background, that side of my career, that this is fairly routine by states. But to have a private firm making this available to governments to surveil on heads of state, that and maybe not the friendliest of circumstances, is concerning. And in that same list identifying Macron, the Prime Minister, it was revealed that the King of Morocco and the Moroccan Prime Minister were also on that list. So we don't even know if the Moroccan intelligence agencies were also targeting their own leaders.
Indeed, I was going to say that one would not expect this to happen between France and Morocco because they're friends, allies. There's a long-standing relationship. But from what you've just told us, this really opens sort of a whole Pandora's box, doesn't it?
Well, it's a Pandora's box for the public, because we all know that this is going on between states. I mean, my information was hacked by the Chinese on multiple occasions, my personal information. So the hacking and the state-to-state competition, that's been going on for some time, and we get glimpses of it in the public. We don't really see that much in the press, and we don't see a lot of the responses in the press. What's new here is that this is sort of a little bit like the space missions today, where it's open for the general public. This is becoming that the general public is being targeted, that private sector companies could use these technologies, that this is sort of expanding beyond state-on-state surveillance into new realms, which raises questions of privacy for all of us. I may have been targeted, and I don't even have a way of knowing if my phone was targeted, because there's no trace unless you use these sophisticated methods that Amnesty International and others are putting forward. You don't even know if you've been hacked.
Indeed. In the past year, my own security clearance was pinged, shall we say, here in France. Then it was all suddenly clarified. I've had no explanation as to why, but the good news is I can go to places that I might want to go to, and that's obviously reassuring for me. Still remains a big mystery, of course, and that's something that maybe one day will be clarified or not, as the case may be. Isn't it ironic, though, that, this kind of information can be reached, but then you can sort of see situations, and we hear it all the time, when there's, say, for instance, there's a terror attack. People get under the radar, they slip through the net. The kind of people that maybe the public would want to see traced and tracked and caught, it doesn't happen. The technology is not used for that.
Well, that's because the terrorists are always two steps ahead of the methods being used to catch the terrorists. It's the less effective terrorists, or the helpers, are the ones that get swept up in these nets, and it's the general public, obviously, that gets targeted, and both by the methods of surveillance and by the nefarious things that go on, like those thousands of companies that recently got swept up in those attacks that weren't necessarily targeted at them in the first instance. And so, yes, a lot of this is on the dark web now. My social security number, maybe yours too, is shown up on the dark web, and then you have to do, protections against to protect your identity. But I think what's important right now is that Israel is protecting the firm NSO, and there have been court cases there saying, this shouldn't happen against journalists, human rights activists, and others by the Moroccan state or other states. Now, of course, Morocco denies and says there's no proof that this has happened. But every indication with those that have been targeted in Morocco is that this is being done by the Moroccan state. And at the same time, how much relief can we get in the courts, in the Israeli court system? All of that remains to be seen. I guess this also raises questions of international internet governance, which, of course, has been an issue for some time now. Who polices the internet? Right now, it's states talking to states. And I guarantee you a lot of the solution about this surveillance of Macron and his prime minister won't even happen in the public. It will be resolved privately.
William Lawrence, Thank you for lifting the lid on many issues that most of us are talking about here right now. Thank you so very much indeed, William Lawrence there, Professor at the American University in Washington. We're watching for all developments, of course. Who knows what revelations Pegasus will bring in the next 24 hours.